Hello everyone and welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan and I appreciate your patronage. So the backdrop is my 32-gallon long live bears tank. Freshly cleaned yesterday morning. Fish looking vigorous. Overpopulated for sure, but I'm doing all I can to maintain that population in as healthy a way as possible until I can bring some to my LFS. But that's another story, another video. The reason I have some jars set in front of the tank is because that's what I want to talk about today. You know, the debate in the aquarium community about what to feed your fish is ongoing and by and large, vitriol free, but still challenging discussion. Forgetting wet foods, which is what I call frozen, and live foods, which are the penultimate. That's the best, all right? Those two in general are better than anything else I'm going to talk about in this video, generally speaking. Not all the time, and maybe I'll get to that, but generally speaking. So when you rule out wet or live foods, you come down to what's available in the dry fish food aisle. And if you've walked through a Petco or a PetSmart, or you've just scrolled down Amazon, there is a crap ton of fish food available for us hobbyists. And some of it is better and more expensive than the rest of it. So that debate is not the subject of this video. I've discussed, and so have a lot of my peers on the fish tubes, which food they prefer and the reasons why, protein content, filler content. Northfin makes a great case for their foods based on the level of protein and the type of fillers they use versus some of the stuff you might find in a big box store. And I've talked about that, and you can find my video on Northfin if you like. But let's just cut it down to its bare essentials. Which is better, pellets or flake? I would say 80% of the fish food community would lean on pellets. Different size pellets, and one of the iconic brands in that category would be Bug Bites. And of course, just pretty much a lot of the manufacturers make both a pelleted and flake version. So if all things are equal in terms of protein and what they're making the food out of, which is best? 80% of you, and that's a rough number, it's just based on my countless viewings of so many of my peers, lean on pellets for various reasons, and folks outline them in countless videos. The only reason I'm making this video is because I go the other direction. I like flakes better, at least I do right now, and here's why. With all the different kinds of fish I have in my aquarium, so many of them feed at so many different levels in the water column, I find that pellets, really all of them, they do a lot of things that I don't like, that make it hard for certain fish in my aquariums, be it a nano tank with their really small mouths, and then when the pellet's rapidly sinking, they pretty much tap at it like it's a rock, and then it hits the bottom and your Coreodoras get it, and that happens over and over and over again with pelleted foods like I'm showing here. On the right is a Bug Bite variant, and then this is a general pellet. I would love my fish to eat pellets. They're easier in some ways, easier to feed, and they're easier to store. They take up less space. Lots of different reasons from a pragmatic standpoint, but I see a ton of them just fall right to the bottom. And even in an aggressive tank like this, these fish, which will attack anything, honestly, I mean, I'm just putting my fingers, you get, I mean, come on, it's like piranha. There's still a bunch of food that falls to the bottom. All right, fine, that's what Coriodoras are for. But when you have a more sensitive nano fish, any of the tetras or micro rasboras, chili rasboras, clown killies, those pellets are gonna go right by them, you know, and that's just the fact of the matter, you know, in my experience. So what I have done with pellets is I've gotten on Amazon an El Cheapo coffee grinder, and I take the bug bites, even the one they say on the package for small fish, it's still too big, and I put them in this device, just like coffee grounds, and I grind them, so I at least get a combination of powder, small pieces, and then bigger, right? And that helps mitigate the problem with rapidly sinking food, because I'm a big believer in bug bites. However, I'm delighted that they make a flake version, because with flakes, when I put them on the top dwellers attack it, and then it starts to fall immediately, and the fish in the middle get that, and then the little particulates that haven't been gotten hit the bottom, and your bottom feeders get that. And babies have an easier time of it if you have babies, but if you don't, I don't understand the problem folks have with flake foods. I've listened to super smart people talk about it, and I still have to go a different direction. I'm not saying you should, but in my experience, feeding, you know what, this looks like Tetramin, and this is a krill flake. It's either extreme or North Finn's version, or a combination of both. And, you know, those are great foods, and I'm sure they're available in both pellet and dry forms pretty much across the board, maybe not from all manufacturers. But I like flakes because when I throw a few big pinches into this tank, I get full coverage, and I know all my fish, even perhaps a random little fry like this guy, are going to be able to find little pieces of the powder and stuff that these bigger red piranha, if you will, don't get. And even when they're masticating their food, that is chewing, attacking, all the little pieces that come out of that are readily available, and they still have a little bit of floating power. They're lighter than pellets and crumbs, so they're gonna stay kind of mid-level aquarium, and that's where the lion's share of all my fish are. And nano fish, when they'll go right up to a pellet. I know that, you know that, we know that, but how many times have you seen them literally like kick it around like a soccer ball, like a seal pushing around a beach ball, and then give up on it and it falls to the bottom? I've seen that way too many times with sinking pellets, and I just am tired of it. Now, I already told you what I can do to mitigate the size factor. Another thing you can do is, you know, soak them for 20 seconds or so, of half a minute, in water before dumping them in, and then it's more like a rapashi or a paste. And, you know, that'll work. But with flakes, it turns into a paste rapidly as it's sinking and as the fish are eating it. And if the nutritional value is the same, and in some cases it's not, you know, the cheap big flakes that you would get at a Walmart aren't going to have the nutritional value of even a Tetramin flake, let alone a North Fin or an Extreme. But the flake version, all things being equal, I don't have to do anything. I don't need the coffee grinder, which is a super cool hack. I don't need to soak the food ahead of time. I don't worry about how big the flakes are, because they're easy to just scrunch as you drop. You know, I'm not giving you examples of all this because I'm not going to, you know, I can't hold the camera and do that. Also, it's a little bit obvious. You know, we all feed our fish, so you know what I'm talking about. I don't have to dramatize it with a show and tell. So, in that great debate of, if you take out all the nutritional issues and you rule out live food and frozen food, which are the best, anyone who says differently is nuts. I mean, maybe with a few exceptions, live and frozen food, generally speaking, are the best. Now, you can have problems. You know, if you go too hard with the bloodworms, a lot of fish, betas come to mind, but others, they'll get bloated from that intensely rich protein and, you know, intensive food. And, you know, you have to bear that in mind. Plus, a lot of fish are omnivores leaning towards, you know, vegetarians. I forget what the fish word for a vegetarian, but they're vegetable-based diets. So, you know, you have to be careful with just frozen foods, because there are no frozen vegetable-based only foods, at least not that I know of. I make them myself, like blanching zucchini. But but bloodworms, blackworms, and brine shrimp, baby brine shrimp in particular, are my go-tos for maintaining, you know, stunningly happy and healthy fish, and mitigating disease and all sorts of other issues. It's more expensive, harder to get certain live foods. I've done a video on the endless hassles to secure live blackworms. And frozen foods, you know, they're in the you have to keep them in a different place, and et cetera, and it's a little gnarly. Sometimes I get frostbite in my fingers, not really, but sort of, when I'm breaking apart the bloodworms, you know, sometimes. Obviously, I don't worry about that if I'm defaulting to dried pellets, or in my case, preference rather, flakes. Another thing, as I kind of wrap up on this ramble, is while live foods are the best across the board, bar none, there is an exception. Adult brine shrimp are very low in nutrition. So, you know, I wouldn't waste too much energy raising your baby brine shrimp into adult brine shrimp. And trust me, it takes some doing to get sufficient numbers, and it's resource intensive. It occupies precious real estate. You need to deal with salt water. It's not worth it, because adult brine shrimp, unless you gut load them, which is doable with spirulina flake or powder rather, they're like potato chips. You know, the fish love them, and for that reason I do buy a portion or two of adult brine shrimp when I'm at a certain store and they have it, because I know my fish will appreciate it, just like, you know, when your mom brought home you know, a bag of popcorn or candy. But the nutritional value is nil unless it's been gut loaded, and if you're buying a bag for $3 at your LFS, it has not been gut loaded. The baby brine shrimp, on the contrary, as many of you know, are super nutritious, because they have the yolk sac still from when they freshly hatched, which is just an incredible source of protein and other nutrients. As they utilize that yolk sac, they become less and less nutritious. So after 24, 48 hours, you really want to be off that batch of baby brine shrimp and on to the next one. But other than adult brine shrimp, live foods are the best. All right, so not all of us can afford, find, or store live foods for any prolonged period of time. Let's be real. Most of us, especially newbies, are going to default to buying one or two bottles or cardboard containers of fish food at the Petco or PetSmart, and it's probably going to be a Tetramin or a Fluval Bug Bites, you know, I hope, because that is a great food. But when I see the flake of Fluval Bug Bites, that's what I buy. It's a little harder for me to get. Obviously, I tend to support my LFS and try to buy my foods from them versus just mass buying on Amazon, but that's not to preclude you from finding whatever you need online. I'm also leery about buying those bulk foods you see at fish swaps, You know, I don't want to name names, but there's a couple major hitters there, and there's a lot of talk that that's really just kind of low end, cheap made, high filler stuff. And you know, if you have 50 tanks in your fish room, I can see the need for buying in bulk, but I do have to throw a cautionary flag at some of those you know, gigantic pillow-sized bags of food that you see at swaps for unbelievable prices. You know, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, as the old saying goes. The last thing I'll say is, if you haven't noticed from 15 minutes of staring at these damn things, I just take all my food and all the different packages it comes in, and I put them in the same uniform size jar that are easy to find online, really cheap. You can get them probably at any Container Store, and I'm talking cheap, like 12 for $4.50. And I just put labels from, you know, something I found in my wife's stationery drawer. And so Krill Flake, General Flake, General Pellet, Bug Pellet, wafers, which I haven't talked about, but algae wafers, and on, and I can stack them in my closet. And then I find it's a lot easier because every single manufacturer uses a slightly different shape and size. So this is another cool hack in terms of keeping multiple foods fresh and not, you know, in different sizes and shapes that make it a real pain in the ass. So if nothing else, whether you agree with me about flakes versus pellet, I think it's a really cool hack for all of us to consider using these tightly sealed, uniformly shaped and sized jars, as well as getting a $15 coffee grinder to grind up bigger pellets so that your smaller fish can eat them. And I keep primarily small fish. Well, that's not true. I mean, these guys are pretty bodacious. And then, of course, in my display tank, I've got some rainbows and cichlids. But in all the other aquariums in the fish room, it's pretty much nano fish. And I'm happy just grinding up flakes in my fingers. Remember, no matter what you do, variety. Not, you know, too many bloodworms would be terrible, and too much of just one flake here, you know, day after day, occasionally maybe throwing in some pellets. That's not good enough, in my opinion. It's good enough, but that's not good enough. So just go with variety. Consider some of the things I've told you, and I'm happy to continue this conversation in the Discord, or, you know, hit me up, ask a question. I'd be delighted to try and to answer or have a enthusiastic and passionate discussion, because I'm still learning and I could be wrong, but you've heard my points. I'd love to hear yours. As always, everyone, keep your hands in the tank, and ciao for now.